We gladiator one was not a for example. There was elements. And so it's composed, you know, those were real people, but the whole story. Very good. All right. No, it would drive me nuts. Yes? No, never. He was a Republican, then he's going to become the leader of the democracy. Everybody, what day is it today? Flamingo Friday. This is my first Flamingo Friday because I don't really count the ones unless I'm here in 3 weeks. Think about it. You guys had one last week, and I know all of you celebrated on your own at home during the break, but it's not quite the same. Before I turn on the light, have you guys noticed the rat?
Yes, I noticed the rat.
But one more thing, have you noticed the rug? Yeah. I mean, the rug's pretty cool. All right, I need a drum roll. Drum roll, everybody, let's do it. Yes! Yeah. I kind of want to go home, but I'm going to work. I'm going to work through this. I'm going to keep working. There's no off switch on me. I'm looking for birds. All right. Oh, got to put Jaden's over here. Here's one more for crew. All right, did we get to this? Where did we finish yesterday? Where did we finish yesterday? With what? Did we get to tariff? Did we got here? Did we get to this?
We kind of secession. We were like one more secession and
Yeah, right here?
Yeah.
Hey, let me draw you something. Oh.
You drew us them.
And I drew the draft on the tariff.
Yeah.
Did I show you? Okay, so all of this, and we talked about, then we had democracy, Indian removal, and then we're a little behind, so we're gonna jump right in. And this is Calhoun's vision. Remember, prices go up, unify the South. And the big thing is, everyone will talk about the tariff, and after this, they're gonna act, for years, historians are gonna act like it wasn't about slavery. It was all about slavery. Calhoun wanted to find that issue. He's gonna spend the rest of his life. Soon it will be Texas. That will be the issue that will actually kind of do it. Set the stage. Once again, blame Texas. And so, once this happened, I didn't write this down, but you will, this is going to happen. So we have now the sectional divide. It's going to blow up. So everybody write down this before we watch this. South Carolina nullified the tariff at the end of 1832. We will not enforce the tariff. And they threatened secession. So South Carolina nullified the tariff. December 1832. So the big crisis is going to be into 1833. This is right after Jackson was reelected. Calhoun is no longer vice president. He resigned over the tariff, over slavery. Calhoun thought that Jackson would support slavery and support the expansion. He thought that whole democracy thing was just talk. He was surprised. I mean, Jackson meant it. They despised each other. So now we have the sectional crisis, best personified by this. That's pretty cool. Purely accidental. Anybody know where that is? That was in Utah. That's a copper. Let's watch that one more time. That's Civil War. This is remarkable how they did this planned implosion and that happened. and dissolved. That's pretty cool. I would argue, I think this was a little plot. I find it very satisfying. So, but unfortunately, what I'm talking about here is the threat of civil war. Jackson's reaction to South Carolina doing this, and he knew it was Calhoun. Jackson's reaction was very simple. You want me to quote what Jackson said? To when he found out that these people are not going to obey federal law, and they're traitors, therefore. You want to hear Jackson's reaction? This is my best acting of Andrew Jackson. By all damnation, I'll hang them all. He was furious, and he hated Calhoun. And so, his idea was, as he saw, this is the elite, this tiny little cabal of very wealthy plantation owners who think they can run the country. This little cabal. Remember, his idea, we're fighting for the common man. And so, this is anti-elite political control. This fits in with his democratic attitude. And so immediately, he is going to push through the democratically controlled Congress the Force Bill. And the Force Bill says the military, aka the Navy, will enforce the tariff. And if they disagree, if they resist, Jackson says he will personally lead the Army. The Army's tiny, but he's still Jackson talking. Will lead the Army into South Carolina and any place else that nullifies the tariff and destroy them. So Jackson is making it very clear. Calhoun is riding high. This happened to Calhoun, and all his friends in other states organized a convention. It's going to be in Nashville, Tennessee, near Jackson's hometown. A slap in the face of Jackson, where all the rest of the southern states will nullify the tariff, unifying them to protect slavery and to Calhoun's point of view, protect the Union. If there's any restrictions to slavery, that's civil war. That's what Calhoun said. Didn't have to, but that's what he said. Well, all of a sudden, here's Jackson saying, I will hang everyone with trees. They know I'm Jackson. What happened to that convention after Jackson said this? I put this nicely. It collapsed. It just collapsed. Nobody went. Nobody went. In fact, Jackson, almost forgot one thing. I'll finish this. Nobody went. Nullification died. Nobody followed this up. Andrew Jackson, acting very strong at that moment, without a doubt, intimidated the nullifiers. And they did not carry this out. So the threat of civil war is being alleviated. But it also shows Jackson's intelligence. Jackson didn't have like an invasion to take over the harbor to collect the taxes. He had the Navy sit right off the shore of Charleston. We have a tiny little Navy, but they're called cutters, revenue cutters, with small little patrol ships. They stopped merchants before they ever got into Charleston Harbor to collect the taxes there, avoiding a conflict. He even began to negotiate a tariff, a lower tariff to avoid the conflict. Because Jackson wanted the tariff lower too, just not by civil war. Jackson was very smart here. Force, so the stick, and then I should go. The compromise tariff and no armed conflict, the carrot, the Force bill, the stick. And eventually a compromise tariff would be negotiated. Who would be given a lot of the credit for this tariff? Who's the great compromiser? Henry Clay. Henry Clay did the credit, but Jackson really deserves the credit. Calhoun actually turned down a better deal, and then his support collapsed. And this turned out to be a massive humiliation for Calhoun. Absolutely humiliating. Absolutely humiliating. And humiliation for the South. It took nullification off the table. The problem is, secession is still there. So the next big crisis, they're going to jump right to secession, as we will see in 1850. And then 1860. 1860 will be civil war. Jackson, without a doubt. Oh, this is a song, Jackson and the Nullifiers. I just thought this was kind of a funny song. They could print these out so fast because the Industrial Revolution just beginning. It doesn't make any sense. But the Union is saved. Jackson saved the Union, without a doubt. And everyone knew it. Here is a cartoon of 1832, even though it actually happened in 1833, of Jackson standing down and humiliating Calhoun. Here he is. The Union shall be preserved. There's Calhoun Humboldt. This was made in February of 1861. As Southern states began to secede, but the president was weak, did nothing. He literally hid in the White House. His name was James Buchanan. Lincoln had been elected, but he's not inaugurated yet. And so they knew it in 1861 that Jackson saved the Union. There's reasons why, Jackson, looking back for the United States, he, without a doubt, saved the country. Doesn't mean we can't forget what he did, the other things he did. We have to remember what he did. But there's good things too, if you like the United States. And so, that is the statue of Jackson in New Orleans. It makes sense to have a statue in New Orleans for the Battle of New Orleans. This is at St. Charles Square. That's me being arty, like the picture. See, I got that. Looking up. Isn't that cool? Look at the beautiful sky. Actually, it was a beautiful day in New Orleans. And it's about the Battle of New Orleans. But when the United States took New Orleans from the Confederacy in 1862, Benjamin Butler was the commanding general there, and Butler had this carved into this statue as a slap in the face to the secessionists, to the traitors who started the Confederacy. The Union must and shall be preserved. On Jackson's statue during the Civil War. So they knew what Jackson did. Now, Jackson, who hated currency, and which is that kind of makes me laugh. He thought currency would destroy the country, but that's why he's on the $20 for democracy and saving the Union. Now, there's other things that we can't forget about Jackson, but that's why. All right, that's a cool statue. He's also, his statue is right in front of the White House in Lafayette Square, right there. Yeah.
So you're saying he hated
I don't know, because he's dead, but he hated currency. He thought currency was destabilizing because he did not understand the financial system, but very few people did then, and virtually nobody does now. Got to be honest. And so, but here's a headline about tariffs. I thought tariffs are still in the news. This was in today's Friday, right? Wednesday's Washington Post. So former President Trump is vowing, and the way the law is, he can dramatically increase tariffs. Remember what I told you about prices? He's already planning on dramatic. American businesses, even before the tariff, are going to start jacking prices. Trump's elected, prices are going to start going up dramatically. And if prices start going up here, that'll be worldwide. So inflation, if you thought inflation was bad in 2021, which we had there was worldwide inflation, COVID, war in Ukraine, bird flu. Why do you think eggs went up in value? They had to kill about 50 million chickens worldwide because of bird flu. There's less chickens, less eggs. What happened to the price of eggs? They doubled. That's 2022. So the prices are still high. That's why the chickens started laying eggs. Okay, so, but I want to show you how tariffs are still in the news. So we talk about tariffs back in 1833. It's still the same economic factors as today. Always trying to tie things together. The bank war, very quickly the bank war. So Jackson's built this big money, Eastern elite, controlling the bank, controlling our economy, and he's saying these rich people can raise or lower the money supply for their own personal gain against the common man. How can we have democracy if we are slaves to a few wealthy people and money? They will always be able to manipulate the system, control the political system, control the courts. We must attack this. So that was Jackson's view. This is not a fight against the bank. This is a fight for democracy. Now, don't forget, when Jackson said democracy, he's talking about white men. Again, there's limits. There's things about Jackson we have to understand. And we can't forget. I think it's important to know both. So, the election of 1832 will be Clay versus Jackson. Clay is going to run for president. His second time. We're not done with Henry Clay. His second time. And what he did is, I didn't type this in. So everyone type in, or write in, Clay put up the rechartering bill. Clay wanted to recharter the bank. Clay wanted to recharter the bank in 32. 4 years before it was up, the contract was up. So to recharter the bank in 32. Clay wanted it as a campaign issue because Clay believed that everybody wanted the bank. And Jackson says he hates the bank. So if Jackson vetoes it, he's got a big campaign issue. If Jackson signs it, Jackson's a hypocrite. So this cartoon is showing how Clay supporters, well, they're now called Whigs, are sitting there going, we have Jackson now in a bind. You see what Clay's doing? He's sewing Jackson's mouth closed. So it destroys Jackson's policy. That's a pretty brutal cartoon. Look at that needle. These cartoons are pretty brutal back then. So they rechartered the bill. What did Jackson do when he got that bill? He vetoed it right away. The hell with Henry Clay. He vetoed it. Once again, I put myself in that error. I can't help it. I'm just kind of like, okay, so veto says move on. I should have vetoed it. But I'm leaving it. I don't care. And this is going to be a big campaign issue. And the Whigs were overjoyed. The thing about the Whigs, these are a few very elite people, plantation owners, those connected to bank and finance and business, the new industrial textile mills. They're all together. Just this group of people, and they all think alike. And so they all together, they all agree. So what do they assume about everybody else? They all agree the bank's great, so they assume what about everybody else? Yeah, they all are like me. That's why it's important to know people outside of your tiny little group. I'm not saying I necessarily do that all the time, but you should. So this is another cartoon of Jackson being roasted on a spit of public opinion. And they're showing him with hooves. Why are they showing him with hooves? Because they started drawing him as he is so dumb, he doesn't understand the financial system. He's like a jackass, a mule or a donkey. And there's Van Buren, his vice president, drawn as a pig. But what happened with the election? I drew it in red because of the fire. You like this? Jackson wins big. Jackson won a massive victory, confirming what Jackson knew. People distrusted the bank. Now, it doesn't mean that destroying the bank was good policy by Jackson. Even if you agree with the reasons he did it, this would turn out to be a bad thing. But we're now talking about motivations. Because he said that the head of the bank, Nicholas Biddle, could manipulate the money supply for his own personal gain. So Jackson decided now, I'm reelected, I'm going to destroy the bank. So he went to destroy the bank. And so federal government receipts are going to be put into state banks. These state banks are going to be dubbed pet banks. It's one of the weird things, they just, weird term they use. So these are state banks, they have a contract within the states. They're all still tied to the national bank system, a little like the Federal Reserve does now. And the idea is Jackson's going to destroy the bank. So the national bank had its tentacles in every state, and Jackson is going to cut those tentacles off. This is the flag Jackson's having, the cane, the veto. That's supposed to be the head of the bank, Biddle. Well, that almost immediately triggered something that nobody expected, a land bubble. Because of the hell of Indian removal, there's all of a sudden this big land speculation in the Southwest and the Northwest. When I say Southwest, I mean Mississippi. And these banks had no regulation, and they started making risky loans, loaning to people to buy this new land. Now, why would banks make risky loans? Because that risky means they might not be paid back. If the loan is going to be risky, what happens to interest rates that the bank can charge? They can jack them up. So even if they don't get all the loans back, they'll get enough. That's why banks do it. Now banks are corporations, so there's even a bigger incentive to make risky loans. I'll tell you about that a little bit later. Well, a land bubble started. Prices started going up for land. And it became this thing. You're a fool if you don't buy land. This actually terrified Jackson, but it was so new, this system. They didn't know what to do. At the same time, Biddle angry about the bank. He's the head of the bank. He started deflation. I have no idea why I wrote deflation twice. I know I wrote deflation again. Let me change something really quick. He limited. This is what I meant to write. It'll make sense. It'll make sense. It does weird things if you type when it's on the screen. So, back to this. He limited the money supply. By cutting back the money supply, he started creating deflation, and deflation will lead to depression. I don't know why it does that. If you type in something when it's on the screen, it like leaves like an impression a part of it when you first do it. He was going to create a depression. He's going to show people how important the bank was. But isn't this exactly what Jackson said? That one person could manipulate the money supply for their own personal gain? This is exactly what Jackson said he would do. So Jackson is correct. The point is, his prescription was wrong. They were willing to put people out of work because the economy is totally different in just 20 years. It is changing so fast, it's blowing people's mind. So, we got to get to Jacksonian economics. Now, Jacksonian economics is different than Hamiltonian economics. But this is now dealing with this brand new system of capitalism that's just being created. Monday or Tuesday, we will learn what capitalism is. So, what Jackson realized something which is very true. Economics are political. The government makes the rules. The money supply decides what a monopoly is. Remember, the United States was created because of monopoly. Remember the Tea Act. And so that is democracy. Will the people have a voice in their livelihood, in how a country deals with food, water, shelter, heat, our necessities, which are now all going to be for sale in this new capitalist system? Or will it be decided by the market and a few individuals who control the market? This is democracy. And well, they feared capitalism because it concentrated wealth. And they feared the monopolies that come out of it. Now, they hadn't quite happened yet, but they could sense it. And they're going to be right. And they remember the American Revolutionary War. It wasn't taxes that did it. It was monopoly. And remember, Jefferson feared a strong central government because it would help the wealthy and the elite. So Jackson saw himself as a successor. Next, he thought, okay, speculation is bad. So let's only have hard money. Hard money is specie. No more currency. Specie limits the money supply because the value of the money is in the coin. And there's only so much gold or worth about 1/16 the value silver. Now, this is not good policy for small farmers that Jackson thought it would be. He was completely wrong about this. It actually could help those on top, but this was his gut reaction. Yeah. And then the government should have a purpose for the common good. Or he would have said the common weal. The government for the common good. There's a role that government has. And he realized something intuitively that Jefferson did not. If you don't have a strong government, monopolies will form. And if monopolies form, the people have no power. He understood that. And so there has to be a strong government to protect people from monopolies. Jefferson thought strong central government will always help the merchant elite. Jefferson disagreed. And so that is going to be the beginnings of what in the United States will be called liberal economics. The beginnings. So we already have conservative economics, the beginnings of that with Hamiltonian economics. So this one is more looking for the common person, but it's not really a policy. It doesn't really have any idea because it's so new. We will develop liberal economics eventually. Now we're talking liberal in the term of the United States. So most places around the world, what we in the United States call conservative economics would actually be liberal economics. I'm sorry, we got to get over that. And one more thing. So this is a cartoon showing Jackson fighting Biddle in the bank. And Jackson doesn't have the wealth, but he might be, he's not as big as Biddle, doesn't have the wealth behind him, but he's tougher and braver. And that's Jackson. And here's Henry Clay and Daniel Webster, two prominent Whig politicians. And she represents wealth, good diet, so she's bigger. And she's drinking a drink called port. Port is was kind of considered one of the drinks of the wealth, kind of a sweetened, thick wine. So if you're rich, you have that with your dinner. What did the poor drink? They drank whiskey, old-fashioned whiskey. And here you have Martin Van Buren, him representing kind of like the everyman militia man who had to fight. And here's the frontiersman, the Western, that myth of the settler. And how do we know he stands for democracy? Yeah, he's got a cat on his head. Naturally, that represents democracy, as we all know it. What food represents democracy? And what animal? On your head. So that's why I have shirts occasionally the cat's on, because of democracy. What's
So
that?
we have to go with liberty, cat of democracy, and squid it too.
The squid of tyranny,
And so we're starting a beast here.
and all tied together by cheese. Goats love cheese. We all know that. I don't know why. But from 1830 to about 1850, there were all these pictures of guys running around with cats on their head.
All tied together in one big cheese.
Could be a cheese wheel, I like
That
that.
should be a conspiracy theory for special.
So, 1836, there's going to be an election. Jackson is not going to run again. He is so ill. He had one of his bullets removed, a bullet right here removed while he was president. And he could hardly eat. Jackson was in rough shape. By the way, what did they do to get rid of a bullet then? How did they prep him for this?
Pour some whiskey in it.
Yeah, whiskey and bite on a piece of leather. Gouged it out. What made a good doctor back then? Speed. Make sense? I will take a little bit of time and tell you how they did an amputation during the Civil War. That'll be a great thing before lunch. Okay, so
Cute.
it involves tying a blood vessel. Moving on. Martin Van Buren is vice president. Van Buren from New York, Kinderhook County. He was known as Old Kinderhook. Old Kinderhook. I'll tell you more about Old Kinderhook down in just a second. One actually interesting thing about Old Kinderhook involving me, on Wednesday, I was in Kinderhook County in New York last week. But back to this. Van Buren. Van Buren started out with nothing too, just like Jackson. And he was one of the most wily, clever, intelligent politicians. In fact, he was so good at it that he was almost manipulated. They would show him as like a fox. You know, fox are known as being very clever hunters. Well, the Whigs, they ran 3 candidates with the idea of splitting the vote so it went to the House. It didn't work. Van Buren, everyone got this? Van Buren was elected president. Pretty big. Not like Jackson, but big. And you notice we had Webster, William Henry Harrison, Whig. South Carolina ran their own person. That was in the middle of nullification. So South Carolina just all voted for one relatively unknown pro-slavery member of Congress. Yeah, Magnum, will never have any major political impact after this. Almost immediately, everything fell apart. Right before the election. That didn't work. That's what we call an instantaneous annoyance. Everybody write down the species circular. Everybody write down the species circular. You want to know the problem with monopolies? Garbage programs like monopolies have no incentive to do anything good. Oh, by the way, that's a ballot right there. Richard Johnson claimed he killed Tecumseh, and so that's the ballot. And you can see all the electors pledged to Van Buren. All right, Species Circular, 1836. Now, laugh sales, they thought they could have them by, that's how they used to spell laugh. Everyone spelled it with an F back then. We didn't get the D till about And so, land sales would come about with species, with the idea being there's not very much species circulation. By the way, I made that whole
Did you just?
I just accidentally typed that out. All right. They thought if they sold it by species, they could stop the land bubble. I know, it's supposed to be land. It's supposed to be land. I just wrote the app and I just left it in there. Land sales. Jackson thought if you only could buy species, there's a limited amount of species in circulation. That would drop the land prices down and end the speculation. Now, this is to say the least, this is a ham-handed, disastrous program. Terrible idea. Because by doing this, combined with Biddle's deflation, the bubble burst like that. And prices tumbled 70, 80% overnight. And people who had borrowed money to buy land, thinking that I'm going to get rich because land prices are going up, lost everything. Lost everything. Here's one of, I'm going to Illinois, buying Illinois land. And you notice the starving horse, the starving family, the wagon. I've been there. That's during the bubble. Speculation destroyed. People were speculating in land, but also this new technology called railroads. And so when the bubble burst, the whole led to massive deflation. Massive. And deflation is depression. And I can't emphasize this enough. Once you have debt that no one can pay back, bank failures, no one can borrow money, banks that survive quit loaning money, you have depression. Well, Van Buren is now present. And therefore, it's going to be called Van Ruins, get it? Van Ruins depression. So this is the Panic of 1837. And this was much worse than 1819. Much worse. Because the economy was changing so fast. And it would turn out to be worldwide. Well, this is a notice, it says specie clause. So it's blaming the specie circular. And it's basically an eviction note. And he can't work, and that represents this. His tools are laying idle because of the depression. Here's his family, and there they are, going to kick him out of his home. So there are more people than ever before have this strange thing called wage workers. And this has never happened before. And all of a sudden, if businesses can't get loans and can't sell goods and prices are dropping, they shut their doors. And there are more people unemployed. Our concept of unemployed have literally just happened. And so, this turned out to be a disastrous. And here's another very famous one, a disastrous depression. And there'll be another one in 20 years. So here are unemployed people. They turn to drunkenness, and that's why the liquor store here is. They go to pawn shops right here to sell everything they have. That's a way to gouge money out of people. Pawn shops where you basically borrow money, your collateral is your goods, and they charge you about 300 or 400% interest. Run out of bank, and above Jackson, glory. Hot air balloons are kind of the rage. You can see all these things about with hot air balloons and supposed to be the American economy. They're like the rage in the 1840s. So there's another cartoon of Jackson, and he's all these little banks, and he's destroying them. Jackson as a jackass, and he's out of control, stomping on this. And here's the Bank of the United States, but he can't stop him. Who's coming up from behind? Van Buren as the fox. And that's supposed to be William Henry Harrison. We're not going to go all the details of it, but the Democrats are going to take this and say, we're not jackasses. Who uses those kind of animals, jackasses or donkeys? Hard-working farmers. And the Democrats will adopt that donkey as their symbol because of this campaign. Just like Yankees was an insult to Americans, and they adopt that. All right. Everybody write down this, Industrial Revolution, and that's where we quit. Because all of these changes are happening because of the Industrial Revolution. And before you go, look at that wheel. Everyone, look at that wheel. And look at the guy just sitting there. They paid that, or he's probably some poor employee saying, sit there under this wheel. So he's sitting there. All right, I'll sit under the wheel. Everybody know what that wheel's for? Turning, thank you. Huh? Good idea. No, that's a very good idea. That would be the wheel, that, we can connect to a steam engine that would turn and then power the factory.
Basically, that's the factory's motor.
Would you like some homework?
No.
I'm glad you like some homework. That's good for you. So, please read 376 to 390 for Tuesday in America. To 390 out of America for Tuesday. So Isabel, I was going through Burlington, Vermont, and I saw your name everywhere.
My last name?
What's the heck with that?
My great uncle owned a big house.
In fact, we're walking by and there's a big
Yeah, I know. Wait, where?
That was pretty funny.
Yeah, we visited it one time, and I was like 8, and I was like, oh my god, there's a fire station actually my name.
You owned it then?
Yeah, exactly.
You're kind of a big shot.
But I'm not making a profit on it.
Well.
Yeah, exactly.
I had that integral worksheet, but I haven't been able to find it. So, is there any chance you guys complete it and
Yeah.
get it on Monday?
I believe you. You're on Monday. I won't mark it. Okay.
Okay.
Please find it.
You didn't
though.
give up.
No, I didn't know.
And it's so easy on paper. You throw it away or you mix up. But I'll remind me. I'll get.
Okay, so I was gone for like the work days when we were doing.
Yeah.
And so I finished it. I finished the math thing, but I forgot it.
You get it to me Monday before
Oh,
school.
I was gonna say I can like send you a picture.
Send me a picture and then just get it to me. Send me a picture sometime in the week, and I know anytime, and I'll have to see it, and then I won't mark it. I'll give you the plans and I'll go on quarter. Sound good?
Because I think I had like, I was like, it was just like highlighting something.
And then I was like, I went to go get it out and I was like, it's not there. I was like, the one day neither of my parents are